Hey family, thank you for tuning into Our Roots podcast with 𝘃𝗶𝗍𝗲, where only the strongest roots see the light. Brought to you by Botánica candles and more. And if you haven't had the opportunity, hit that subscribe button. Really excited about today's episode, guys. One that we've been wanting to come out with for a while on the Orisha Ochosi, or the noble and divine hunter. And today's guest is an initiated priestess of this Orisha for quite some time. And apart from that, she has quite a social following herself. I'd like you guys to join me in welcoming Miss Shadow of Wolves.
Thank you, 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲.
𝗵𝗏𝗏. Shadow, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you as well.
It's good seeing you guys again, knowing how far back our relationship goes, especially you being spiritual family to Miss 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲, my wife. It really is a pleasure and an honor to have you on the pod.
Thank you. Bendición to her as well. 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏
mysterious guy, and that's why we wanted to come out with this episode so much. But we also want to delve into you as well and kind of, see where you and Ochosi kind of link up, right? Yes. So just to get started, what's your background? Like, what are some of your credentials?
I started off originally in receiving 21 divisions.
Okay.
And then from many, many years ago, from 2009, and then I received a Lukumi with 𝗿𝗲𝗍, 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲𝗍, because my padrino of a Lukumi passed away.
Right.
And then I went into receiving 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲 and getting scratched.
Wow.
And then we all go through many, many steps, right?
Oh, yeah, the ladder.
Yes. And then I went into receiving 𝗃𝗲𝗹𝗁 and so forth and getting crowned in 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲.
Nice.
Also receiving Santeria as well.
Nice. So that's a couple different spiritualities. And to be honest with you, I've noticed that the children of Ochosi, that's kind of your path. That the ones that I've met, they kind of walk all the lanes, experimenting. And I think it really has to do with how complex you guys are spiritually. And Ochosi is a big misconception because some people just look at him and they're like, oh, he's the hunter, But there's so many other things to him, right? You have the doctor, you have the brujo, you have the warrior, you have the hunter, you have all these different aspects to his personality. So being that you delved into all those other spiritualities before 𝗃𝗏, what ultimately led you to 𝗃𝗏? What was that calling like, okay, this is what I'm going to dedicate a lot of time to?
Originally, I had different incidences where I had lost children, I had miscarriage.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember things were not aligned correctly. And I remember getting a reading from 𝗃𝗏, and 𝗃𝗏 was able to see that. And I had to definitely receive my 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲 when I was pregnant with my son, 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗲.
Mm-hmm.
And 𝗃𝗏 saved our lives. When I was pregnant, 𝗃𝗏, they made sure that we were cleaned. Our road was correct in terms of, determining our guardian angels and our spiritual paths as well. And we followed that guideline. So that's really what led me to 𝗃𝗏. When they're different, sadly, we should go to 𝗃𝗏 or we should go to being crowned and so forth, not when there's a tragedy. That's not supposed to happen. Usually people wait and they say, oh, something happened, let me go get a reading. But normally this is the path of life. If it's in you and you feel that and you know it's your destiny, don't question it. Just go and do what you have to do in terms of receiving your warriors and so forth, or different essences of Sanse 21 or your beads or so forth, or 𝗃𝗏𝗏.
Absolutely. And that's a really interesting dynamic between you and your son that we're going to delve into, yes. Especially knowing the dynamic that Ochosi had with his mother and how important she was in his spiritual path. And when we look at the concept of Ochosi, he was born in basically two Odus. Where he comes down from heaven is in the Odu Ochekana, right? And then that same story, the famous one about him and his mother, is in the Odu Osabara as well. So that's where you're going to see it most prevalently. And basically the story goes, some people say 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗲, some people say 𝗃𝗏𝗏 contracted Ochosi to find the most beautiful bird to be able to gift it to Olodumare, right? Being that he was so talented, they couldn't think of anyone else to do the task. So Ochosi said, no worries, I'm going to find the bird. Just give me 3 days just to be safe, right? Yes. Ochosi found the bird the first day, but he was relishing in having the bird in his house. He was like, oh my God, all the accolades that are going to come, etc. And, he continued about his normal daily routine. But what happened was his mother came to visit him, as she would normally, and she saw this beautiful bird. And she said, "Oh, my God, look what my son got for me." And she took it upon herself to take the bird with her back home, right?
Yes.
Ochosi, staying a day out and coming back on the third day with Orula waiting by his hut, went in confidently to get the bird to be able to give it to Ifa. But when he walked in, the bird was gone. Where 𝗲𝗏𝗏 was a little disappointed, and it made Ochosi look very bad. And in his rage, he decided to shoot an arrow into the sky, cursing it, saying, "May it find the heart of whoever stole this bird." When he let it go, he heard a scream and immediately recognized it, running to his mother's home and seeing what he had done, and the bird flew away. And at that point, Ochosi became very solitary. And at that point is why he's so recognized as being so reserved, having this stereotypical loner persona. You being a daughter of his, a priestess of his, I have to ask you, even regardless of all this information, what does he represent to you?
Oh, 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲 is my king. He is my everything.
𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲
represents the energy of being regal, freedom. I always believe in the freedom of others. I don't believe that anyone should be tied down. If you want to go to the woods and you want to go for a walk and you want to enjoy nature, this is my haven. I would go alone to the woods. And that's that solitude that 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲 has. It feels really good being his daughter because that's the same persona I have. And freedom is what's very, very important to children of 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲. It's important to me. It's important to my godchildren, my family, that we should have freedom to be able to, you can be alone, but you're never alone because the energy of elemental spirits, of your Orisha, of your ancestors are always with you. And oftentimes when we do feel alone, sometimes we're around the room of many people.
Yeah.
But we have that safe haven and that energy in our blood to feel most comfortable around energy of nature.
And I think it comes from you guys having a real sense of self-confidence. Ochosi is the kind of guy, he doesn't have to be around 100 people to feel, in place. And he's an interesting character because he is a part of the warriors, but he doesn't always rock with them. Like sometimes he'll be there, sometimes he won't be. They'll call a meeting, he didn't show up, and they're like, okay, it's just one of those days. You know what I'm saying? But it's interesting you mentioned the freedom and, kind of being against the tyranny of, being social and whatnot, because Ochosi was very much about personal rights, civil rights, all of those things, because he had a very different way about him. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't everybody's cup of tea. And there's actually a 𝗶𝗸𝗍 in the Odu of 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗲, where there was a beast that was terrorizing a village. And Ochosi was actually the youngest hunter in the village, where other hunters were trying to capture this animal, ultimately kill it, so it wouldn't hurt anybody else. And all of them were failing, right? Where Ochosi, having this chip on his shoulder, this courage that so characterizes him and his children, said, "I'm going to go in and I'm going to handle this." And everybody laughed at him and they jeered at him. But the most intelligent decision he made there was visiting Orula first, where the child of Ochosi by nature interacts with Ifa on a very profound level, And 𝗃𝗏𝗏 told him to be innovative, to be different, to not go about things the same way other people did. And this really resonated with Ochosi. So when he went into the jungle and he saw the beast, and it really doesn't have much of a description, they just called it that in the scripture, resting by the riverside, he introduced himself. And the beast was kind of appalled. He's like, "Wow, you actually have the nerve to say hello to me. I'm going to kill you." And Ochosi was like, "Well, before you do that, let me serenade you a little bit." And Ochosi pulled out an instrument. Some say it was a violin. Some say it was a drum. That way you can enjoy yourself before you handle me. And the beast was like, "Okay." But the beast started falling asleep because Ochosi's song was so beautiful, right? And when he did fall asleep, Ochosi took advantage of the moment, sacrificed him, took off the skin, put it on himself, and he went back to the village. And just like that, he was crowned king, right? So, what question am I leading with this is, have you always been that kind of personality, the courage, the freedom, the open-mindedness? Has that always been kind of your MO?
It's amazing. I used to work with children in psychotherapy. I'm a therapist.
Wow, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
And there are many lives that walked into danger. And I remember I just came out of my 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗍, and this man had a gun. And they said nobody can talk to him. He's going to kill his wife and his kids. And it was actually on school grounds. And I took the courage, and I walked up to him and I said, can I just talk to them for a minute? Can I talk to your children? He had a picture with his wife on the floor. I said, that's a beautiful picture of your family. And he dropped his guard. My heart was going boom, 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 boom.
Of course.
And I took his wife and children and I brought them in the school. I walked really, really cool and calm. And then they shut the school down and they were able to handle him. There's been many instances now that I'm hearing this story, and thank you.
Of course.
Where I've walked into danger, but why look at danger? Because in the face of danger, either you're going to go or you're going to become it or you're going to stay there and fight it. And not always do we come off like, rah, no, you have to be really cool because either way it has to be rectified.
Yeah.
So I'm glad, and with all being humble and honesty, this is the first time I've heard this 𝗃𝗍𝗃𝗍, and I appreciate you and I thank you for this.
Oh, beautiful story.
Yes, and it just reminds me of how many lies I've seen. I have seen, like I've seen a young man have a noose, and I've spoken to him and talked him out of suicide, and this gives me more clarification of 𝘃𝗍𝗂𝗍 today.
Well, when you look at the 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗲𝗃𝗍, which was the one we were speaking about, it says courage has no age, courage has no size.
Okay.
And, seeing the parallels in your life, even though we don't have a bow and arrow and we're going after a lion, there are various lions that we deal with within the social aspect of modern life, right?
Yes.
Whether it's someone being on the edge and being able to call them off, whether it's being able to save a child and protect a child. That was Ochossi's whole thing. He did not like injustice. And that's why a lot of people say, no, Ochossi's just focused on putting all the drug dealers in jail. That's part of the job, I guess, you know what I'm saying? But that's not really his focus. There's so many more epic things that go into what is the law, what is social justice, and you being in that field makes a lot of sense. When you started learning about the religion, did you think you were his child?
Originally, no. You know why? Because he is not as popular. With all due respect, now he is.
Your word,
right?
yeah.
And even your podcast is really opening light to a lot of people, so they know more about 𝘃𝗍𝗂𝗍. So all we know of was like 𝗃𝗏𝗿𝗲𝗃, 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲. So originally, when I was getting my 𝗃𝗍𝗄𝗃𝗍, I was like, I'm 𝘃𝗏𝗄𝗃's daughter. Right?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Everybody. So it turned out during the 𝗃𝗍𝗄𝗃𝗍, because I believe 𝗃𝗏, his words never hit the floor.
𝘃𝗍𝗃𝗃.
The original, and I know this may be debatable, but for some, when we have 𝗃𝗏𝗃 and 𝗃𝗏 determines who our guardian angel is, his words never hit the floor.
Yes, ma'am.
Originally, I thought I was 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗲's daughter because I love the ocean. She turned out to be my mother anyway.
Yeah, wow.
But I originally thought I was 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃 because of all the, I'm very feminine as well. Even though 𝘃𝗍𝗃 is my father, he's a male energy.
Yes, ma'am.
Because, Orisha works with male energies and energies of different
in general,
aspects. So I originally thought, and I was like, don't ask. Also, too, my other godfather, may he rest in peace, 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗃𝗃 Ntinu, your father-in-law. They were all there.
Robert, yeah.
And he explained everything to me in English. It was so beautiful.
Yeah, real gentleman, yeah.
Yes. And I said, well, don't ask, because I thought I was the daughter of 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃. You cannot decide who your guardian angel is. Your guardian angel is the one that chooses you, that's on your 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃, that works with you and your 𝗃𝗏𝗃 in your life.
Correct.
And that is not chosen by you, that is chosen by the Orisha. So they went through 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃 and she said no. So I started crying. They went through Ochun.
Oh, man.
Ochun said no. They went through 𝗃𝗏𝗃. 𝗃𝗏𝗃 said no.
Oh, God.
They went through
Plan D,
Oya.
Plan E, Plan F.
And so I started thinking, and so the old man, the Bible, he goes, ask 𝘃𝗍𝗃𝗃.
Oh, wow.
He said, you don't remember? I worked in the jail at the time. I was a therapist in the jail, saving many children who were locked up. I didn't choose that position. I thought I was going to be in a place called Park Place, providing psychotherapy. And they were like, no, we have a good job for you. You'll be in charge of it. And I'm like, I walk in, it's a juvenile jail.
Oh, wow.
And I felt so sad seeing all these children in like solitary confinement.
Of course.
And I was like, I got to do something to save them, So when I started putting two and two together, he said, ask 𝘃𝗍𝗃𝗃. I honestly did not know exactly who 𝘄cie was.
Sure.
I had love for shaman energy. I still do. I had love for Native American energy, indigenous, as my family's from Guyana and Trinidad and Barbados on my mother's side, and they're all indigenous. So I said, oh, I think they're talking about the man with the bow and arrow and feathers.
The guy in the loincloth.
That's what I thought,
running around the jungle.
Yes, and when they said 𝘄cie, they said, now he'll be standing behind you and listening, so you know who your guardian angel is. When I looked at that 𝗃𝗏 of a ruler, I said, my goodness, this is my life. It's just so amazing. From that day forward, I studied 𝘄cie. I fell in love with 𝘄cie triple-fold. I said, in the next life, I pray to be crowned 𝘄cie again, because his energy is so misunderstood, so shamanic. I remember my oldest son, I was going to say my youngest, my Isaiah's brother, he used to see a man, this is in New York, with a gold bow and arrow on top of our roof.
Wow.
We lived upstairs, you know how in Queens, the different... And he used to see this man with a bow and arrow, and we didn't know who it was.
Because in Queens, you might actually have a guy up there. We got to make sure it's a spirit or not. You know what I'm saying? Depending on part of Queens.
Or it was a gun.
Word.
I'm sorry. But so I said, oh my. And I remember all the time I used to fall in love with the bow and arrows, when, you know, how we used to go on trips in New York, the museums.
Yeah, sure.
And I said, oh, I want the rain stick. I want the bow and arrow. I didn't know. Well, come to find out, my father, may he rest in peace, my biological father,
God bless you.
My sisters on my father's side, they are Jewish, and my father's Polish.
Okay.
So he converted to Judaism for their mother,
Nice.
right? So he was a hunter. And she said, I bet he had a lot to do with that decision, because he would go into the woods. I actually have some of his skins.
Wow.
And he would hunt deer with a bow and arrow.
Wow.
When I reunified with my dad, the last time I saw him, I was 6 or 7 years old.
Wow.
I was 32. And I was like, I don't know, I'm going to meet him. You know, I was like, what am I going to do? I love you, okay? I know you're listening. This tall, white, quirky guy, what am I going to do? So when he met me, he was like, you know what we're doing? Our first day, I was like, what? He goes, you're going fishing. Took me on a big boat with all of these, I don't say I got to keep it real, rednecks and all these men. It was used to fishing and stuff. And I'm like, how am I going to? He goes, now you have to catch the biggest fish. He goes, I'm going to show you how to throw in the reel. And he said, you better win this competition. So they started telling me, oh, you look like Oprah. I don't know. He said, I look like Oprah Winfrey. I'm like, but let me just. So I throw the reel in, and I caught this huge fish. I didn't win. I was the second. But I was like,
you did all right, though. I wouldn't have caught anything.
I caught it. It was a fish. And he was like, I'm going to show you how to fillet it. All of that energy came from him as well.
That's your DNA, yeah.
And this fish, and I'm like, you know, the fishing, the hunting, he used to use a bow and arrow. He had a gun, too.
But he kept it classic. He kept it thorough.
So there's the energy tying in to my love for ꞌECHOSI.
It's in your DNA, and that's really incredible stuff, because I didn't know that about you. You know, you hear we're all from New York, right? So it's kind of like, you know,
yes.
You're not thinking hunting and all these different things, but even in the concrete jungle, you were still able to have that expression and confirmation, you know. And when you talk about the shaman energy, and you know, with the whole vibe that you have, Shadow, that's all him, you know, the feathers, because he was the medicine worker. He was all these things, and people get confused with him and kind of give up on 𝘄cie because he's so complex. I think of the male Orishas, he's the most complex. Because with Eshu, it's kind of like, okay, the darkness, he's a trickster, 𝗶𝗸𝗏's purity, but when you delve into 𝘄cie, the fish are like all the things that we've mentioned. So that's a really incredible thing, you know, that you brought up. And another really basic story about 𝘄cie, because people really want to, you know, have his backstory and be able to build upon it, is the one in 𝗀𝗲𝗎, right? And the Odu of 𝗀𝗲𝗎 was where 𝘄cie was down on his luck, you know. And he had his bow and arrow, you know, he was doing things correctly, but when he would kill the deer, he wouldn't have a way to go through all the forage to be able to get there. So the meat would just be there, an animal would take it. On the other side of the jungle, there's a guy named Ogun, right? Your partner.
Yeah.
And, you know, Ogun wasn't as finesse. So 𝘄cie's very finesse. Ogun is he's very brutal. So he picks up his machete and he's cutting through the leaves and he's scaring all the animals away. They're both going hungry, right? So they find each other under a tree and they start talking to each other about their problems, you know, which was epic because I don't think they had said 5 words to anybody up until that point. Gotcha. And when they started hearing each other, they were like, wow, maybe we could help each other. How about this? We'll 50-50 everything. next deer that walked by. Bow and arrow was able to kill it. Machete was able to get through all the foliage, and they split it 50. So when I look at Ochosi, you know, we talk about how, you know, the loner and all these other things. You know, how important has collaboration been in your career or your life? Like finding that other half or being able to work with people, because you've helped so many.
Yes.
You know, how important has it been to be able to collaborate, to be able to accomplish those further goals?
It's been easy and hard at the same time, because we're dealing also too with human personalities.
Very complicated.
And yes, and when we're in the line of fire, say for example, there's a conflict, or someone is putting someone down, or, you know, or putting me down, or saying something very negative, it could be very hurtful. But we have to sometimes understand that people have different personalities.
Oh, yeah.
And we have to tolerate that. But it goes to a certain point where you could say, okay, this human energy is just a human energy. Orisha is Orisha. So in collaborating, no matter what, in 𝗃𝗲𝗿𝗀𝗃, we all have to work together.
United we stand.
This is united we stand. Now, if it's an ultimate disrespect, it's different. You know, you walk away, especially if it's an elder, and you walk away peacefully. This is what I believe. But at the same time, you cannot have, for example, a ceremony without having an 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗲, without having a 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗲, without having a spiritita. There are so many energies that have to come together. You cannot crown an ocha by yourself and just with your family. It has to be a whole lineage of people.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
we must learn from the good of the situation as well as the not so good, and take the good as a good challenge and an experience that we learn from. Because we can always make something that's very bitter, we can make it sweet by
Correct.
just coming together, because the people are the people, but the guardian angels, even the spirits in the Orisha, that's what needs to be respected. We walk into each other's life for a reason. And 𝗃𝗲𝗿𝗃, that's a pact that we have to work together no matter what.
Well said, and you see that because when you look at Ochosi, everybody's like, oh, he's a loner, but the thing is no one had patience for his complexity, and then he had impatience for other people's, you know, nuances, and then it was just a debacle, you know. But when we look at how much he was able to accomplish, and this is a lesson for all of us, like you said, because that's what everybody loves to say in the religion, 𝗃𝗲𝗿𝗃, you know, en la unión está la fuerza.
Yes.
There's force in numbers, right? But applying it takes all of the things that you've mentioned, you know. So another theme I want to delve into with you is, you know, you mentioned your children.
Yes.
You mentioned your sons. You know, what was it like and how important was it for you to be able to get crowned with Isaiah?
Oh my goodness, that was so. And originally, it was like heart wrenching, right? Because Mafedefun Egun, Mafedefun Orumila, Mafedefun Ochun, Mafedefun Chango, 𝗿𝗲𝗿𝗂, all the Orisha and spirits. When Isaiah had his health condition, and he had to be crowned in Ocha. They say in Ocha, the ears don't pass the head.
Yes,
but
ma'am.
I had to go in. But I was willing to save him first.
Correct.
Because when it comes to our children, we get very desperate and like, okay,
Of
you
course.
go first. But going in with him was originally a struggle, because you're paying for 2 Santos, double clothes,
It's a
this,
lot.
that.
It's a
And then
lot.
you have to make sure that he was a baby at the time, so his ita is followed through.
Correct.
And everything is remembered. And we came out together spiritually, like the same 𝗃𝗲𝗿𝗃𝗃 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲, the same 𝘃𝗶𝗹𝗃𝗃 𝘃𝐴, the same 𝗃𝗃𝗿𝗃 𝘃𝐶𝗂𝗃.
Yeah.
Like, just, it was such a beautiful blessing, because why? When we were under that throne, it just brought our souls together. It was just really beautiful. And really, 𝘃𝗏𝗋 also saved his health, because he was not able to speak. He was going through many, many complications. And Chango said, I will take care of that 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗲. He did say that, and you know, Chango did. So when we were crowned together, it was a beautiful experience, because now we learn from each other.
Your brothers.
Yes, and he teaches. Isaiah has taught me many prayers. He will shoot the mayubas, and he's very strict. Like, I'm throwing over, he goes, "But did you ask this? Did you?" And I'm like, "Okay, did you?
keeping you in
Yeah,
check.
did you want me to the floor?" And I'm like, you know, so he's very, and it's just beautiful, and watching him grow and the essence of Orisha cover him. So it was a challenging experience, as it is for all Yabos. but it's just a beautiful experience to grow. And then to see my daughter, her get crowned in Ocha as well.
Oh, she got crowned as well.
Yes.
Nice.
About 5 years ago now.
Nice.
She is also 𝗀𝗲𝗿𝗲,
Okay.
you know, so 𝗀𝗀𝗿𝗲's children makes 𝗃𝗏𝗄𝐻𝑐𝗍 children. They say a little nervous.
It's the flame. It's all about the fuego.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, so she is crowned 𝗀𝗀𝗿𝗲. My son is marked, my oldest son, for 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃. He's
Nice.
not crowned yet, but he loves La Santa Muerte and different spirits. And
Spiritual
I respect
guy.
that. He's a very spiritual guy, and it's still a blessing. And he loves 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃 too. So it's so beautiful growing together as an Ocha family. And my husband is marked for 𝗀𝗏𝗃.
Yeah, absolutely.
But all in due time. You know, we don't push and push. All in due time, Orisha would bring him to the foot of Orisha and the blessing of Orisha if he's ready. Because not everybody's ready all the time.
No, and you know, not everybody's meant to go through that process. If they are, they will.
Yes.
And the most important thing is exposure. And you know, I haven't had the privilege of interacting with your other kids, but just seeing Isaiah, how he's matures into a fine young man, it's really a reflection of you and Lair. You know what I'm saying? And all of the examples that you're giving him. And 𝗃𝗏 has a way of unifying family, right? It makes you a better parent, partner, child, etc. And why did I want to touch on specifically you and him? Because in the 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲, it speaks of Ochosi and his sons, right? Ochosi was a great king, and it was in the land of 𝗀𝗶𝗍, right? This is one of the wombs of what Ochosi worship is, 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲 worship, the hunter clans, right? And Ochosi was a really good guy. He wasn't strict. He was logical, you know. He didn't really let emotions get in the way of his job because he knew things could get convoluted. So the people loved him. He was fair. But, you know, with that kind of notability and that kind of love, you know, sometimes it can breed envy. And it was actually breeding envy in his own council, right? Where they were trying to find a way to eliminate him to be able to take control of the throne, right? So in Africa, specifically Nigeria and Oyo, on an annual basis, the Oba, or the king, goes through a kind of like an audit, right? You know, how do people feel about you? Let's take a vote on you. It's not an election. It's more of a soft symbolic thing. You usually don't get voted out, but the symbol for it is an unfertilized parrot egg, right? And when Ochosi that year opened the calabash and saw that it actually had something in it, he was completely shocked. He said, there has to be corruption here because I haven't done anything to be able to deserve this. But the only way a king cannot be a king is by transitioning. So it's kind of like harakiri. It's almost like a Japanese samurai, go kill yourself and, you know, figure it out. So Ochosi was like, I'm not killing myself. So I'm going to figure this one out. So the day of his public suicide, you know, everybody was kind of waiting for him to do it. And out of nowhere, his sons popped out. And each of them pulled out a bow and arrow. And Ochosi said, I know I've been betrayed today, but you guys are always going to remember this mistake. And each of them shot a bow and arrow in each of the 4 cardinal directions. And he said, the same way these arrows will never find each other again, Africa will never be united. And at that point, they escaped and they started a life somewhere else, you know. And it's known as the curse, right? And there's various Odus that talk about it, but 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃 speaks of Ochosi doing it specifically because they betrayed him. Interesting story. I mean, even till this day, you do see kind of division over in that continent. So maybe, you know, things have kind of lingered since then. But what it leads me to is, you know, how has Ochosi influenced your parenting style? Because he loved his children. That was his everything. That was his solace after going through so much pain with his parents. You know, does it make you a little more firm? Does it make you more lenient? Do you try to walk the middle ground? How has it influenced you?
This is really a hard one because you know why? Sometimes I feel like I'm too much of a free-spirited parent. You know, I believe in my children having free will, but I do direct them and I tell them, listen, this is a mistake that you're going to learn from, but you want to go down that road, you're going to learn from that mistake.
Yeah.
I'm giving you the advice, but it's going to hurt me if that mistake does happen. Because the only way we can learn from mistakes, and our children can learn from mistakes, is by them experiencing
The failure.
Yes.
You know, losing
Yes.
teaches much more than accomplishment. And if you lose over and over again or win over and over again, not realizing
right.
why, you haven't learned anything.
Yes.
So that makes perfect sense. And Ochosi, he tried to be as lenient as possible, but, you know, as parents, we always have to find the division between parenthood and friendship. And if we want to save our children,
That's
teach
right.
them, it ultimately leads to us having to be a parent first, right?
That's right.
But he tried to work with them. You know what I'm saying? So when we talk about, because your mother's 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃, you said.
Yes.
Beautiful
born from Ochun.
Yeah, absolutely. But a beautiful combination because Ochosi and 𝗀𝗻𝗃 had an interesting relationship, right? Because in various Patakis, 𝗀𝗻𝗃 was Ochosi's mother, right?
Yes.
And she would get frustrated with him. She really would, because of all of her children, he was the one that would really not listen the most. Like there's two Patakis that I'll base myself off of. One is in 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲 and the other one is in 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗲. So in 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲, Ochosi was very adventurous, you know, and he would go into the jungle by himself, and she would be like, hey, you need to be careful. He would go with his brother 𝗃𝗍 in this case. And, you know, there was always something going on, but he really didn't pay attention to her like most adolescents don't to their parents.
Right.
And they didn't realize they had an enemy. And that enemy was a spirituality that we now identify as 𝗃𝗏, you know, the one that lives on metal. And, you know, 𝗀𝗻𝗃 quickly realized that her children were in danger because, you know, the bows, the arrows, the knives, they were constantly, you know, interacting with these things. So she went to visit Orula, and she asked Orula, how can I protect my children? Because there's no way they're going to come for a reading. They're just too rambunctious right now. They don't even believe in this philosophy. What can I do on their behalf to be able to protect them, you know? And Orula said, well, instead of them being here, we can do everything to you, and it'll protect them. So 𝗀𝗻𝗃 quickly sat down, they performed 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗲, and when 𝗃𝗏 had the opportunity to attack Ochosi and penetrate into his bloodstream, it was the ancient vaccine where he was able to actually avoid it completely, and 𝗃𝗏 became frustrated and just gave up altogether because she's like, I can't deal with this guy and I can't deal with his mother, so let me just leave them alone, you know?
Yeah.
So being a daughter of Ochosi, and then with all the songs and praise that incorporate both of them, how has 𝗀𝗻𝗃 played that role in your life, just that being that compliment?
Oh, 𝗀𝗻𝗃 is, like I said, I thought originally that she's still my mother, but 𝗀𝗻𝗃 is the one that I go to when I want to calm and I want to feel the calmness of the ocean. And when I think of her, I see her and 𝘄𝗂𝗂𝗋 hand in hand. Not only is my favorite color blue,
Nice.
but also 𝗀𝗻𝗃 is the one that I go to when I need peace. 𝗀𝗻𝗃, I see her as being the mother of all Orishas, right? But also in relating to 𝗀𝗻𝗃, it reminds me a lot of my mother, who was alive, may she rest in peace, 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗍 Tenu. Because a lot of the Patakis, even with the one that you just described in terms of Ochosi just doing his own thing, and that was similar to what I put my mom through, like, okay, we're not going to church today, we're going to play handball. I got the group of kids together.
Did that adventurousness sometimes bring friction within that relationship from time to time?
Of course it did. It did. You know, I used to sense when she would show up to my high school, Hillcrest, and then she showed up with the belts because in the 80s they didn't care, and I was like, "You can't catch me," and I would just run. She showed up at Hillcrest with a belt, so I'm like, okay. So
she's like, "You got to come home eventually."
Yes, you know. So she reminded me of 𝗀𝗻𝗃, of always having that protective energy, of always giving me forewarnings, even though some of these different challenges I had to learn from. But 𝗀𝗻𝗃, it has deep love for 𝘄𝗂𝗂𝗋, as she does all her children.
Sure.
But she cried a lot of tears for 𝘄𝗂𝗂𝗋
when he left the house.
A lot of warning.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, there is even a Pataki where 𝗀𝗻𝗃 went to Orula, and Orula told her that one of her sons are going to go out hunting, and in the full moon, Osign will catch him.
𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗍.
Yes, and he became 𝗿𝗲𝗍.
He became Pharaoh.
Yes, and this warning was given to them. He didn't listen.
Of course not.
Because he had to experience it for himself. So the same energy that I had with my mother, may she rest in peace, I see a lot of that play out with 𝘄𝗂𝗂𝗋. And my mother also loved the ocean. She was a daughter of the water and everything.
Nice.
But at the same time, when we look at this, we have to look at the life of our guardian angel. If there are 𝗃𝗁𝗍𝗍, we can make them 𝗃𝗍𝗍 if we just pay attention and listen to them, and listen to our 𝗃𝗏.
Absolutely, and it really is a grand cycle. And you look at Ochosi, him being such a trendsetter, even within his own family, because he was actually the first person to delve into the jungle like that and start interacting with Osign. When we look at Ochosi, the two people that actually initiated him into Orisha were 𝗃𝗍𝗃, his godfather, and Osign was his 𝗃𝗏𝗍. So imagine the education he received, right?
Yes.
And that's where that link and Ochosi being able to wander to perfection out there really came from. Did you receive, because it's ironic because I actually have Polish blood as well, so that resonates with me. Yeah. And being that we're talking about, so many different backgrounds within you, when you decided to take that step into Afro-Indigenous faith, traditional religions, was there any resistance? Were people kind of like, whoa, Shadow, what are you doing? Was there any resistance, and how were you able to deal with that?
I saw some resistance with my family, but they never really said anything because they were actually in Guyana. There's a lot of spiritual energies.
Oh yeah, like Meridian people and things like that.
So
I've met
they're
them,
like, okay, in understanding Orisha, it's just understanding that there is a difference between. Some people say, oh, you're practicing voodoo. Well, it's a little different. Those are different energies. So I had to go through bounds and explaining, this is the energy of Orisha. Orisha is different when it comes to voodoo practices and so forth. Voodoo is beautiful as well.
Sure.
But there are different energies.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really get a hard time in terms of family members like putting it down. I did spiritually see some doubt, like, oh, when they saw Ode in my house, like he has like the horns.
The monster, it's terrifying.
And they're looking like,
for sure.
oh, what is? So I explained, here's 𝘃𝗍𝗄𝗎's father. This is not a bad energy, and I would do a lot of explaining. But because I already had that within my faith in terms of spirituality, my mom used to take me to the Botánica on 165th by the Coliseum on Jamaica Avenue.
Nice.
But I heard it's not there anymore.
Things have changed, yeah.
Yeah, things have changed. So it was never like a cross, like a. On my dad's side, with all love and respect, my sisters are Jewish.
Nice.
So I had to explain to them, hey, look, this is Orisha, and I would show them the book. Look, this is my guardian angels, 𝘃𝗍𝗄𝗎, and then it became more accepting. But because I'm a loner, I really am, I don't deal with too many people anyway. So I don't have to explain anything to anybody that, I really don't.
Well, the beautiful thing about our Jewish brothers, especially the people that are Orthodox or Hasid, is they have a lot of things in common with us, actually. Yes. When you look at the oldest faiths, semi-modern, however you want to classify them, faiths, Judaism was right there with 𝗃𝗏 all those years ago, 5,000 years ago, even more so.
Yes.
It wasn't really, I had an aunt that lived in Williamsburg. It wasn't really out of the ordinary to see like a rabbi cleaning somebody with a chicken on the corner and then feeding it to the garbage.
That's right.
So when I used to see that as a kid, I'd be like, yo, tia, do they do what we do? They're like, no, but it's close enough. You know what I'm saying? So it really, it's a brother faith. It's expressed differently. And then even when you talk about things like Kabbalah, it becomes, it's much more readily accepted by them. And, in New York, where everybody kind of mingles, a bunch of Jewish guys and ladies have gotten initiated in this as well. So it really, it fluctuates really beautifully,
It does. And also, too, my sister, I was so honored. She joins me in my ego fiesta.
Wow.
And she danced with me.
That's what's up.
And it was the same day that, I don't remember the name of the national Jewish holiday, but it means love. And they wear white.
Nice.
So we were dancing
Yeah.
to the drums and everything. It was just so beautiful. So she was more open in understanding the faith, but I had to explain like what Orisha is and so forth. But it's very similar. I even have a symbol outside of my door that she gave me. I don't remember the name of it. It's like
a scroll.
Yes, and I have it right outside of the door.
Yeah, I recall.
Yes.
Yeah, I've met various people that have it out front as well, and it's for protection. And I think that's why it's so easy. And apart from that, they're very open-minded people in themselves. You know what I'm saying?
Very
so
spiritual.
it's very seamless with them, which makes a lot of sense. And talking about love, right? Because Ochosi, once again, I'm really with what we're doing here today is trying to paint that different portrait of him, because they have him as cold-hearted, they have him as a little bit depressed, but there's actually stories that speak of him actually being quite emotional and even romantic, right?
Yes.
Ochosi here in the 𝗿𝗏𝗶𝗍 was actually courting a woman, right? And he was constantly finding new ways to be able to, stimulate her, a flower here, a feather here. And most people, this pataki for some reason gets overlooked quite heavily. I haven't been able to overlook it because it's one of my signs of initiation. I ask you, how does emotion play a role with you? You know what I'm saying? Whether it's your relationship, whether it's your children, because most people think Ochosi at this point is emotionless. How does emotion sway you at this stage of life?
Well, some of the emotions it's according to the scenario. So some of the emotions, if something really bad happens, I don't know. I just dig into what needs to be done right away.
Yeah.
Go from A to Z, but it has to be done right away. So it's based, if there's a crisis, I don't get caught up in emotions.
Try not to delve.
I can't. It's just, and I notice that the more that he sits on my head, the more it's like, okay, you know, well, what do we need to do to resolve this? And then we cry later.
Yeah.
You know,
once
there's
it's resolved.
Many times, like last year, there was a certain incident that I had to like just dive in and just start thinking quickly from A to B. And then I have to say, wait a minute, let me take time and love for my family. The best thing to do is ask, hey, are you okay? And allow them to speak, allow my son to speak, my daughter, my oldest son, hear them out. That's where I draw in to say, okay, that's where my emotions have to be, in hearing them and listening and communicating, because if not, I'm running to the next person to save them. It's Godchild, whoever it is, you know, so I don't get too caught up in emotions, to be honest. What I do is I go by priority and what needs to be done. And if something happens, whether it's a crisis or a birth of a child or something, automatically I'm thinking, okay, this has to be done, 1, 2.
Yeah.
And we'll go over the little ins and outs later. So that is one thing that is very important. People need to understand Ochosi is the hunter of love as well.
Yeah.
And 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲, he's recognized for love.
Yeah.
And in 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲, 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲 is the justice.
Yeah.
See? So we take time for our family. How do we tune into emotions? Is listening and hearing the energy of their heartbeat, listening to how they feel, asking. And that's how I'm able to pull the emotion. Otherwise, I go into what's really important, what is needed in a crisis. I'm thinking just like this.
Yeah.
And jumping to it. And then we hold a lot of our emotions in because we feel like if we express it, it's a waste of time. And we're always late or may not show up.
Yeah,
anyway.
right?
So,
It's just...
siempre.
Yeah.
So that's how we deal with emotions.
No, and it makes a lot of sense because you guys are such quick thinkers. I tell you, every child of Ochosi that I've interacted with or is a professional or has a real lane of expertise in something, like you guys really dedicate and put the time in to be able to become gurus in whatever field it is. And it really resonates with him as well because that was kind of his thing. And in the 𝗃𝗶𝗶𝗲 was where Ochosi spent his life learning, whatever it was. Like in each different land, he would exercise a different function. So in one, he was the hunter. Then he did some blacksmithing. Then he did something with clothing that had to do with the feathers. He knew how to cook. In another one, like he just became I'm not gonna say jack of all trades because that usually means you're not good at something. He was the John of all trades. Like he just he learned it, you know. So it says that when he arrived in the last land, you know, when he was ready to retire and settle down, people saw him as being a little bit elderly. Because when you see Ochosi, no one ever talks about the aftermath. Like, okay, I retired as a hunter, another stage of life. I've gone through the anxiety of retirement. What happened to him? And it says when he arrived in the last land, people really didn't pay attention to him because they were like, this old guy, you know? But there were certain needs, and Ochosi, having that sense of hearing that we were speaking about, you know, he started realizing, like, I could do a lot for these people. So he was like, what do you need? Well, we need somebody to cook. He's like, I got you. Oh, we need to find a deer. I got you. Oh, we need this. I got you. And they started looking at him. They're like, what don't you know how to do? He said, I've been around the block, you know what I'm saying? And he became so sought after, they just made him king because they're like, there's nothing you can't teach us, you know? So looking at people such as yourself, and, you know, has there always been that strive for knowledge? Because to be somebody like a psychologist, to be a therapist, to have that kind of methodology within your psyche, have you always had that thirst for knowledge?
Yes, always. Always. 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲, more of the 21 divisions, more of Orula. I love to learn, like to study and to learn and to apply it because no matter what, we tend to like, you know, say, okay, this is it. No, this is not it as humans. The sky is not the limit. So in studying and learning, why I question a lot of things like, why does this happen? Or why does that happen? Okay, so I need to understand this. Even on the way here, I said, wait a minute. I remember that Ochosi is very close to elementals, and I love fairies. Yeah. Okay, let's go a little bit deeper into that and see his reason for that and his relationship with Osine. So we never stop learning because once you stop, then why are you here? Why are you here on Earth?
Yeah.
You just have to continue. It doesn't mean reading and reading all the time, but just studying, letting your spirit guides talk to you and listening to what they're saying and learning from your spirit guides. Because the 𝘄𝗎𝗍 also, our guardian angel, 𝗀𝗀𝗋, or ruler, they teach us internally. They teach us, and we have to just listen. So when anything I do, I ask him. I ask 𝘄𝗎𝗍. I learned the hard way.
Yeah.
If I don't ask, well, you didn't ask me, so there you go. So that's a learning process too. It's not just through books. It's not through just studying patakis. It's also just staying with our Orisha, our spirit, and learning why certain things happen and what we need to do not to make the same mistakes.
And speaking about, the things that he interacted with, once again, trying to paint this picture, he was a very compassionate guy.
Yes.
He was never somebody, a lot of the things he captured, he let go. When we look at the Odu of 𝗃𝗍𝗍𝗲, right, it's known as 𝗃𝗍𝗍𝗶𝗱𝗍, which means 𝗃𝗍 is the king of the birds, right? And it's really amazing because I have an uncle, and he's one of my teachers, and he's one of the people I really owe quite a bit to. My uncle 𝗃𝗸𝗍𝗍, right? Son of Ochosi. Son of Ochosi. And this gentleman, has spent the last, I say 30 years directing Ifás, really coordinating ceremony. He's an inspiration. He is an example, right? And he has this Odu, and I'll never forget, he gifted me this story when I was first studying Ifá, because I said, Theo, I want to learn your Odu. I want to learn what it is that makes you tick. And he's like, get ready. You know what I'm saying? So, and the story goes as Ochosi saw that, things were being completely deforested. The animals were being killed,
Yes.
The environment was being destroyed, kind of like what's going on today, And, he performed divination in this sign. He was a 𝗲𝗏𝗍. And he realized that it was time to leave, and it was time to exit. But he didn't want to go by himself because his whole delight was looking at the animals kind of just manifest, So in that sign, it speaks of when the birds left the jungle, right? Or when the animals left the jungle and they went somewhere else. So 𝘄𝗎𝗍 kind of took them into his, space. And the ironic thing about my uncle 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗍 is that he has these beautiful birds. Like, you go into his backyard, he has, I remember one time me and my brother, Lazarito Ofunbile, we actually took birds from Miami all the way to Texas for him because there was one bird that he wanted, So I ask you being, and I can only imagine what the answer is going to be, but you being somebody that was always in the woods, somebody that was always in nature, what do animals mean to you? What do all those kind of energies, how has that played a role for you?
Oh, I love this question. I have a rabbit.
Okay, there you go.
That is my baby.
Nice.
I show you pictures later. I let her free. She runs around. She's the queen of the house.
Nice.
Upstairs, she sunbathes.
Like the lop ear? Like
yes,
the long...
but she's dwarf. And
okay, yeah.
I couldn't have her caged up.
You gotta let her do a thing.
And it made me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So she has her space, and I just believe in her freedom. And then my daughter gifted me a husky, a Siberian husky.
There you go.
And she is just absolutely hyper and beautiful. Animals are the most precious resource, one of the most precious.
Wow.
Besides the plants and herbs.
Yeah.
It really, really breaks my heart to see a lot of these different energies being taken advantage of and being destroyed. Animals are very important. I have set many animals free. I remember in an Ocha, I have in Blessings of 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗲, when I crowned an 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗲, I was supposed to leave the pigeon hanging upside down the flap. I said, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
This pigeon will walk around the house freely.
Nice.
And I set many animals free because freedom is important. Animals should not, when we hunt, you eat what is needed and never take advantage and make use of every single item that you're hunting. So animals are so precious because without animals, as they defecate into the earth, they bring back the source of life.
It's a process, yeah.
It's a process. So all of this needs to be respected. We need not litter. We need not hurt animals or harm animals, as they have spiritual energies as well.
They're gods.
My rabbit, in my opinion, was a reincarnation from a rabbit that I lost before.
Believe it.
And she came back. And my husky has spiritual energy. So animals are very, very precious, and they should only be used during sacred times. And I'm not, I'm semi-vegetarian anyway. So what's important to me is just please take care of the forest.
Yeah.
do not take this for granted in building big houses and its mass production, because Earth will take back the energy that it deserves to have anyway.
It definitely does. It rears its ugly head when we don't know how to handle all the resources that we don't need, you know, when we kind of go a little bit too far.
Yes, we do.
And, you know, that really revealed itself after COVID. So definitely very wise words. And it's interesting, the animal thing, because it leads into a next segment where Ochosi was very goal-oriented. You know, he was kind of like, I guess he was kind of like the Michael Jordan of the Pantheon, or the Kobe Bryant, kind of like the Mamba mentality. Like, I'm focusing on my craft, you know? Right. And that's probably what made him so successful and the greatest hunter ever. We're still talking about him all this time later. But it got to the point where he had accomplished everything, you know, within his sphere of being a hunter, right? So he was getting ready to retire. His wife was very happy because she's like, oh my God, I'm actually going to have my husband home. I don't have to worry about him getting killed by a buffalo. You know what I'm saying? We can actually live now. And right when he was about to do it, somebody came to him, and it's later identified. This is in the 𝗀𝗲𝗿𝗲𝗏. It's later identified that it was Eshu, disguised as somebody, came to him and said, oh, you heard they found a new animal? And Ochosi was like, what? He was like, yeah, it's called the porcupine. You haven't heard of it? Oh. And Ochosi was like, I've hunted and killed every animal there is. Like, get out of my face. There's no way. It's real. And he showed him the porcupine spine, and Ochosi had never seen it before. And Ochosi, like, he lost it. And his wife said, you promised me. And he said, just hold on. You know, so he went to visit Orula to get some clarity as to what his next step should be. And when the Odu came out, it was 𝗀𝗲𝗿𝗏𝗏, and Orunmila had one message for Ochosi. No one waits forever. And Ochosi said, that's all you got for me? And he said, that's what 𝗃𝗏𝗍 is saying here. And Ochosi said, I'm going after the porcupine. His wife pleaded with him not to. His sons pleaded for him not to just stay home. And he left. The scripture says he spent 7 years looking for this animal, right? And he ultimately found it. And when he found the porcupine within 𝗃𝗏𝗍 is even seen as kind of like having this telepathy, or it's a very spiritual animal, ironically, because you look at it, you're like, that thing makes no sense. But it actually started communicating with him mentally. And he said, oh, you found me. And Ochosi got freaked out, and he said, yeah, and I'm going to kill you now. And he said, are you sure that's what you want to do? Are you sure that's going to bring you the happiness that you're looking for? And Ochosi, without even responding, bow and arrow, boom, right? Immediately a curse came over Ochosi because he didn't realize that the porcupine was the son of Olodumare. And when the heavens opened up and Olodumare looked down and he said, I hope you got what you were looking for. Ochosi disregarded him, went back home. And when he got home to show his prize to his family, all that was there was a message. And it says, no one waits forever. Oh, wow. So at that moment, Ochosi realized, I sacrificed my family and my home for my goals, when in reality, I wasn't able to, you know, enjoy them. I guess it's kind of like the Tom Brady syndrome. Like, you know, I got 7 rings and maybe I should stop, you know, God bless, you know, before things get out of hand. But, you know, it's very difficult because back then that was the sport. Hunting was like, this is our game. You know what I'm saying? So it was very hard, even back then, I guess, to step away from something you dedicated your whole life to. So my question to you is, how difficult has it been to be able to balance your family and your goals? Because a woman such as yourself, initiated and having priestesshoods in so many different and popular spiritualities, and then apart from that, your degrees, your education, your preparation, being a mother, being a wife, how are you able to balance all this, or how have you been able to up until this point?
It is not easy at all.
Sure.
Originally, where therapy is concerned, I decided to take a step back from that. And I decided, you know what, Ochosi wants me at home more. However, when it comes to, you know, like or readings or any cleaning or anything, I feel like it does take from my family, you know, and from me, because I'm always trying to save. And what makes it difficult is that I have to learn that balancing is very, very important.
Yes.
So what I've done is I said, you know what, on this day and that day, I'm not doing anything. You guys want to go to a movie? Phone is off. Why? Because then I felt drained, like
Sure.
you feel drained. But yet at the same time, your godchildren become your children.
Oh, sure.
They're your babies as well.
That's why the word child is in there.
Yeah,
You know, it's
no,
a
that's
clause.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
So what's important is sometimes we give and we give and we give, right? But we don't have time for ourselves either. And that is really, to be honest with you, the most difficult situation of my life is sometimes saying, okay, put this on hold, even though the therapy part, because that's a lot of paperwork.
Oh, Lord, yeah.
Forget it. That, thank God. But everything else, I said, you know what? They have movie tickets. Let's sign up for Regal and let's go to the movies every chance that we
Let's
get.
have a moment. Let's enjoy
and
life.
Sign up for SeaWorld and let's do that together. Everybody put the phones away.
Yeah.
And I'm a hippie. I don't really believe in too much of the phones and technology.
Ironically, I'm not a fan
technology.
either. Most people would probably be surprised by that.
Yes, I asked them, please put your phone down. Let's have time. But it is a difficult balance. It is. Even, with Orisha, with spirit, it is not easy. But you have to learn to stop yourself and say, okay, you know what? I'm putting this aside. I'm not, or your body will shut down anyway. And be like, that's it.
Yeah.
So it is very challenging, but you have to do one thing at a time, step by step.
Yeah. And, it's a great lesson for all of us, not just you guys that Ochosi left behind, because the hardest thing we do as adults is the balance between our family and our goals, because to stimulate one is to seemingly put a pause on the other. But as long as we're living our truth, I think no matter which one we're stimulating at that point, we're working towards our goals somehow.
Yes, that's right.
Ochosi here, it was interesting because I have a very special bond to this Orisha, because in my sign, it speaks of where the throne of Ochosi was born, right? And Ochosi here was a king, right? In the 𝗿𝗲𝗿𝗲𝗃, which is my own. And he was really frustrated because every time they would make a throne for him, it wouldn't feel right. Like spiritually, he was feeling off or weak, or he just was like, this isn't working for me. So once again, he went to see his brother Orula, where Ifa told him to perform sacrifice with almonds, right?
Oh.
Which is a huge, huge, huge offering to Ochosi.
Yes.
A bath that I recommend to all of the children of Ochosi with the almond leaves. And they constructed his throne at that point out of the almond trunk after he finished his sacrifice. And when Ochosi sat on it, his life completely changed. He felt great. He felt happy. He felt magnanimous. He was logical. He was fair. All these different things. He felt happier, etc. And, till this day, it speaks of Ochosi on the throne of almonds, right?
Yes.
So I guess to kind of bring things full circle, Shadow, how has crowning Ochosi changed your life?
I was going to go into the almonds, so I'll tell you a story. Can I just tell you a quick
course.
story with that?
I'm allergic to them, so I want to hear everything you have to say about it.
When I was a kid, right, I was allergic to every single nut.
Well, there we go.
I was swelling up. I'll be in the hospital.
That's crazy.
And one day, there was a bodega across the street, and I was like, I'm going to try a Mars bar.
Oh, God.
But I was able to eat it.
There you go.
And I said, how is it? I'm able to eat peanuts and I'm able to eat almonds.
Wow.
And I just started buying, they were 25 cents a piece.
Yeah.
I was buying like Mars bars, eating them. And I was like, and I never realized the simulation between the 𝘄cie and the almond.
Wow.
So one day, being that Isaiah's born from 𝗀𝗍𝗄.
Nice.
His madrina, very, very beautiful old school lady, she had an almond stool. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And she was like, I'm inviting you to my 𝗃𝗏 birthday party, whatever. And I went over and I kept staring at the stool. I didn't know what it was. And she goes, you like that? I said, yes. I said, where'd you get that from? It was like an obsession. She goes, I was testing you. She said, as a child of 𝗃𝗄𝗃, you would know what that is. That's an almond stool. And she gave it to me as a gift.
Wow. That's actually born in my sign. Why Ochosi lives on the almond trunk.
That's from
Wow.
her I got that. She's a child of 𝗀𝗍𝗄.
Wow.
And I said, my goodness, I cherish it. He's there. But the stability, that's all I wanted. I didn't want to be a millionaire. I just wanted stability and peace and good health. Having Orisha crowns and having a 𝘄cie in my life has been beyond a blessing, where I feel the tranquility. Yes, there's no Like, nothing is perfect, in other words, okay? Because if there is, we're not in paradise in heaven. But when you know that your guardian angel got your back, when you know the Orisha's got your back, and you have faith in that, because you can't just rely on the Orisha. You have to rely on yourself. You have to have faith in your Ori. You have to have faith in your spirit guides. I remember when we were renting at that point, and we still are, but we were renting. The people said, "Oh, we want to sell the house. Everybody leave." I was like, "What?" And I said, "You know what? I'm going to leave it to 𝘃𝗍 and 𝘀𝗀𝗿𝗄 and 𝘃𝗀𝗄𝗋." And I said, 𝘃𝗍, you going to help us? I threw Obi. Yes. Sadly, 𝘀𝗀𝗿𝗄 didn't want to leave, and sadly, the landlord, her mom lost her life right after that because we pulled 𝘀𝗀𝗿𝗄 out of his throne because they wanted to sell the house. But that's, you know, an indication that the Orisha, it's very sad, but they move mysteriously and they have your back. So once you know that, no matter what you go through, because we all go through, there's always something in the air or something, it's COVID, life. This, that. When I say 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲 𝘃𝗍, you have my, and every year I learn more and more that he has my back, and spirit and 𝘃𝗀𝗿𝗄 as well. So how does that change you? It changes for the better. Number one, he will tell me, you know what, this is wrong with you, that he'll talk to me in the morning when you 𝘊𝗈𝗐 to the floor and you bless your floor and you throw the water out. I don't do it every day because sometimes I'm tired. I'm not going to be a liar or hypocrite and say I'm 𝘊𝗐𝗐, I pray it every day. Because I don't. When I walk by, I say, hey, bendición.
I got to keep it moving.
Yes. But when you know spiritually that you have the great, let's say padrino, because he's everything to me. You have your father behind your back and your mother. You have Ochun. You have...
And you're in line. You're aligned.
That's it. I am a loner. This is my life, is Orisha. My family, my godchildren coming together. This is 𝗃𝗿𝗄𝗿𝗃 as well. I know it's overly used.
No, but it applies.
But the energy is just so real. And he has changed my life because why? I know even if I don't live to see tomorrow, God forbid, the first thing I'm going to do, I see Jesus, Yeshua, hey, but where's 𝘃𝗍𝗍? I'm going with 𝘃𝗍𝗍, right?
That's your guy.
I'm going to be running around the woods, right?
Word.
So he has changed my life. And this is what honestly, 𝘀𝗀𝗿𝗄 has changed Isaiah's life for his health. My daughter being a firecracker, 𝘀𝗀𝗿𝗄 has changed her life as well. So the energy of Orisha is a blessing. It's not for everybody. Not everybody's meant to get crowned.
Correct.
There's some people that are mambos, hugans, paletos, babalao, or espiritita. That's okay. But when you know the energy, you sacrifice so much to cry and have your Orisha and know that Orisha will never, the world can deceive you, but your guardian angel will always be there. Your 𝘃𝗀𝗿𝗄, because I have to say in blessing 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏, will always be there. You know, and there's an emergency, a ruler, hey, take a batea, hey, my 𝘃𝗏𝗏 ruler.
Here we go.
Here we go, please help. Oh, now you need me. But hey, they're there for you. It's like parents. They all become your parents. And with that, you just fall back. You could fall off a mountain. But do know, it could be 𝘃𝗍𝗍, Yemayao, Chuna, Rumula. They're going to save you. And that's where my faith is. Whether I'm here today or tomorrow. This is my life and my faith. My 𝘃𝗏𝗏 𝘃𝗍𝗍. I think of him, he always has the superhero cape.
Yeah,
that's
the
what they put on us.
Yo. Yeah.
Yes. My 𝘃𝗏𝗏 𝘃𝗍𝗍, every day. My 𝘃𝗏𝗏 𝗃𝗏𝗿𝗄, because 𝗃𝗏𝗿𝗄 opens the road. They all have a purpose, and they all mean something in our lives. Once they walk in our lives, from the beginning of time, they're everything to us.
Shadow.
I'm talking too much.
No. What an epic conversation. Fabulous interaction. Really, really moving, because there's nothing more beautiful than to see somebody passionate about their guardian Orisha. You know what I'm saying? And it seems like it's the one you needed the most, the one ultimately that you wanted the most after getting to know who he was.
Yes.
And just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us, and to all of your following. You know, wishing you nothing but the best, and so good to see you again.
Thank you. So good to see you again, and many more, and many more.
Buru.
Many more. Thank you so much, my brother.
Ashe.
𝘃𝗏𝗿𝗄𝗃𝗍𝗍.
Family, couple things I want to go into before we disconnect after this wonderful interaction. BotánicaCandlesandMore.com is still up and running for all those interested in an 𝘃𝗏 consult, tarot consult, mentorship programs, merchandise, or if you need any products, we do ship. Also, so you know, the podcast is present on all mediums and platforms, not only YouTube. If you haven't had the opportunity, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And from all of us here at Our Roots Podcast, thank you. And until next time, see the light.